Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You know, there's a saying that says you can define someone about who they are now and in the future by what they've done in the past. And only a unusual trajectory or an unusual or startling event can change that trajectory. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Chad Daybell. I want to talk to you a little bit about Sheila Daybell taking the stand and talking about this quiet, reserved, shy young man growing up in Springville, Utah. Springville's a town outside of Salt Lake City, about 50 miles south of Salt Lake City. Chad growing up there was a town of about 15,000 people.
Mr. Pryor, I really much apologize. We're barely picking you up on the mic. I don't know if we want to maybe swap mics or. All right. Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Apologies.
Skill with electronics is showing and has shown throughout this, I guess, correct? Yeah. Springville, Utah, small town, was at the time. I understand now it's 50,000 people. Chad growing up in this small town, quiet, shy, reserved, town of faith, town of religion, grew up in that. We heard Jason William talk about that. Tight-knit community. Maybe everybody knew each other. And then Chad goes on his mission. I don't know very much. You've gathered that. I don't know very much about the LDS faith. Goes off on a mission, comes back. This is not a mission where you gain worldly experience. It's not a mission where you gain insight into all of the unusual things or the challenges that people have in society, things that many of us experience who maybe grow up in larger metropolitan areas or maybe even big cities or other parts of the country where you get an opportunity to experience other things. This is small town living. And he meets Tammy Douglas, and they get married. And they're married for 29 years. And by anybody's definition, anyone's definition, Tammy and Chad raised 5 wonderful children, 5 beautiful children, very deep in their faith, very deep in their commitment to family. And we can say maybe Tammy was the driving force in this. Tammy was the glue that created these wonderful children. But it doesn't just take one parent to do that. You don't raise 5 wonderful children, 5 amazing children with just one parent's input. It takes 2 parents to do that. It does take 2 parents to do that. And they did that, much like they shared in the Springville Publishing Company together. They did all of those things together and built this life. And Chad wrote these books. And again, I told you before, you don't have to agree with what he wrote about, but he wrote books about things that interest him. And Jason William, Steve Schultz, Emma, Jason talked about Chad, and Steve Schultz talked about Chad, deeply involved with the Boy Scouts, deeply involved with his church, a member, a secretary to, and I cannot remember the words, and I will hack him if I say that, but deeply involved with the integral part of his church and his belief. And as Jason William talked about it, he said, remember this when he said, December, Christmas time, something changed. Something changed. What changed in December? Chad got this trajectory that was changing his trajectory. You can judge someone by their past and predict how they're going to be in the future, unless there's an interjecting trajectory that maybe changes the plan. And that trajectory, that bomb that came into his life, was a woman who previously had been married 4 times. And that bomb brought chaos to Chad Daybell's life. And this worldly man, no, not a worldly man, no experience, the only girlfriend, the only woman, 29 years, from the mission to marriage to 5 kids. He doesn't have a lot of experience dealing with relationships, dealing with how to interact with people, maybe being manipulated. And we can argue this all day long. But when it comes to personal relationships, he wasn't a worldly man. And on the other hand, the trajectory that's coming through, the trajectory that's flying into this 29-year marriage is a woman who didn't have 1, 2, 3, 4 marriages. That's worldly experience. That's a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on there. And then it all changes. The amplification of these religious beliefs, these crazy thoughts, this crazy trail of things. And you've made your decision, and I'm not going to go back on that. But look at where he was. And in Jason Williams' own words, Christmas 2018, what changed? What caused this change? We know what caused the change. You've seen all the evidence. And when I went through the voir dire process with you, I used an expression, and some of you may remember this. I don't know if I used it with all of you. I said, everything that glitters is not gold. Lori Vallow glittered. She was not gold. She was the trajectory that changed the plan. You don't go back on 29 years of marriage with nothing as far as a speeding ticket. Raising 5 wonderful children, that takes 2 parents to do that. And then this trajectory comes in and chaos hits. And all of these things start cascading. And this thing becomes very complicated and difficult. Easy. And this small town boy from Springville, Utah, who's residing on a farm with his wife and his family close by in a wonderful community of Rexburg, has this bomb dropped. Suddenly chaos ensues. We have to look back at that, because when you start talking about how do you predict the future, you go back looking at what the past was, and you examine what Chad Daybell's past was prior to the bomb being dropped, the Lori Vallow bomb being dropped on Chad Daybell's life, and suddenly all of this stuff changing. And you evaluate that and you look back and say, is this a person? If it wasn't for that trajectory coming in and changing the path, is this where we would be going? It's not where we'd be going. Path's changed. But you judge what's capable in the future by what you've seen him do with his family, his friends, and this small knit community of Springville, Utah, and raising these 5 absolutely wonderful children. Thank you.